Following my video last week taking a look at what the France national team might look like if Les Bleus could only call upon players who couldn't have represented any other national teams, a large number of you asked for a similar video, but for the England team. If you haven't watched the France video yet, go back and give it a watch, since all of the same disclaimers apply here. The implication is certainly not that any current England internationals shouldn't represent England, given that they almost exclusively spent the bulk of their formative years in England. In fact, I think the only current exception to that rule is Eric Dyer, who lived in Portugal from the age of 7 until he turned 20, despite having been born in Cheltenham. If anything, as with the France 11, this video serves as evidence of how poor many of Europe's best national teams would actually be without immigration. In case you did miss the France video and really don't want to go back and watch it, basically, I'm putting together the strongest possible England team, but without any players who could have played for any other national team. That means no Harry Kane, who could have played for the Republic of Ireland, no Ben Chilwell, who could have played for New Zealand, and no Ross Barkley, who could have played for Nigeria. Even if the player could only play for a non-FIFA affiliated national team, if they have any association with their local confederation, that is enough to rule the player in question out. So that means the player has to be born in England, have English parents, and English grandparents. As with the last time out, it can be difficult to verify every player's family tree with 100% accuracy, but I've done my best, and hopefully all of the information that follows is correct. Here is my England 11 that could only ever have represented England in international football. Goalkeeper: Dean Henderson. The most exclusively England-eligible position in the entire England squad, all three of Gareth Southgate's first-choice shot-stoppers could only ever have played for England, meaning it just comes down to personal preference. Gareth Southgate's preference is clearly with Jordan Pickford, which is somewhat understandable given how well he performed for him as England reached the semi-finals of the 2018 World Cup. Nonetheless, I think both Dean Henderson and Nick Pope are safer pairs of hands. As I've said previously, I think Pope is the best old-school goalkeeper, but Henderson probably has a bit more about him in terms of his distribution. It's splitting hairs, but if I was in Gareth Southgate's shoes, I would probably be giving Henderson the nod. Henderson was born in Cumbria, not far from the Lake District, and as far as I can tell, there are no national teams other than England that he would have been eligible to represent. Right back: Reece James. England obviously have a plethora of talent in the right-back position these days, but three of Gareth Southgate's most prominent right-backs, Kyle Walker, Trent Alexander-Arnold and Aaron Wan-Bissaka, could all have represented different national teams. One very promising young fullback who couldn't, at least as far as I can tell, is Reece James. The product of a footballing family, Reece's father Nigel played the game but hung up his boots early to turn to coaching and to encourage the development of his children. Reece now stars for Chelsea in the Premier League, meanwhile his sister Lauren James plays for Manchester United's women's team. Reece was recently sent off for England after full time following just his third cap, meanwhile Lauren is yet to win her first senior cap for England women's team, but one suspects a call-up isn't too far off. Centre-back: John Stones. Having been Gareth Southgate's first-choice centre-back in 2018, a year in which he won 15 caps and scored as many goals as Neymar at the World Cup, John Stones has fallen out of favour in more recent times. Aged 26, the Barnsley-born ball-playing centre-back simply hasn't been able to cut the silly errors out of his game, and the result is that both Pep and Gareth Southgate are never 100% sure that they can trust him. He is still a very capable centre-back though, who has won 39 caps to date, and without the likes of Harry Maguire, Michael Keane and Tyrone Mings, he gets the nod. Centre-back: Conor Coady. Born and raised in Merseyside, Conor Coady is actually a year older than John Stones, but he only registered his England debut over the most recent international break. A graduate of the Liverpool Academy, Coady only ever made 2 appearances at Anfield and just 1 for the Reds in the Premier League. Back then, Coady operated in central midfield, as he did during his first couple of seasons at Wolves. Nuno Espirito Santo's back 3 found a new role for the Englishman, in a back 3 though, and Coady has since flourished at Molineux, remaining a stalwart at the back and as club captain, whilst all of his original teammates have been sold and replaced with Portuguese internationals. Left back: Luke Shaw. A fiver on Luke Shaw reaching a century of England caps back in 2014 might have seemed like a sensible bet. Shaw broke into the England team and became the most expensive teenager on earth as a 19-year-old, and it looked as though he might hold on to that left-back spot at both Manchester United and with England for the next decade. 6 years on, and Shaw has only won 4 caps since 2014, having suffered a really devastating double leg fracture in September 2015, and never truly having recovered to become the player many once anticipated. He is still at Old Trafford though, and he was actually Manchester United's 2018-19 Player of the Year, so without the likes of Ben Chilwell or Bukayo Saka, he gets the nod. Central midfield, Jordan Henderson. One of, I would suggest, only 2 players from this 11, and maybe 3, that would make my strongest possible England 11 in real life, Liverpool captain Jordan Henderson, was an automatic selection in central midfield. England's best holding or central midfielder, Henderson has become an absolute titan at Anfield over the last 3 seasons, and he has amassed 57 caps for England at the age of 29. Born in Sunderland, Henderson came through the youth ranks at the Stadium of Light and starred under Steve Bruce in the North East before being signed by Liverpool. He has been a full England international since 2010, and he was named as the England Men's Senior Player of the Year in 2019. Central midfield, James Milner. There's obviously no Declan Rice or Jack Grealish available to me in this 11, names that are just fun to say alongside each other to get the Irish guy's blood pressure and heart rate to levels that a doctor might deem concerning, but there is a spot for James Milner. Making it an all-Liverpool midfield pairing, Milner has retired from international football in real life, but he'd probably have amassed 100 caps if England weren't allowed to call upon players who could have represented other national teams. Interestingly, I had initially plumped for Harry Winks, but it turns out that he has a Spanish grandmother. Who knew? Well, all of us now, obviously. Anyhow, Milner was born in Leeds, and as far as I can tell, the ultra-professional 34-year-old doesn't have any Spanish grandparents. Right wing, Phil Foden. Much like Pep Guardiola often did last season, I'm sticking Phil Foden out wide on the right, despite the fact that he is more effective and prefers to play through the middle. Unfortunately, we have another number 10, but fewer options out wide, so that's where you're playing Big Phil. Capped once by England, Foden rather dropped the ball following his first cap, along with Mason Greenwood, but he'll be back in the picture before long. Supremely talented, Foden was born in Stockport and sent to a private school in Manchester that was funded by Man City. Their investment appears to be paying good now, with the 20-year-old rapidly becoming a regular fixture under Guardiola since the departure of David Silva. Attacking midfield, Mason Mount. I said I had decent options in the number 10 position, and there were actually 2, Mason Mount and Adam Lallana. That means that despite being without Jack Grealish and James Maddison, there were still plenty of options in this 11 in attacking midfield. I have opted for Mason Mount, who appears to be Gareth Southgate's preferred option in that position, even though he is able to call upon Grealish and Maddison. The son of a former non-league footballer, Mount was born in Portsmouth, but he joined the Chelsea Academy at the age of 6. Following impressive seasons on loan at Vitesse and Derby County, Mount returned to the Bridge last season to become a regular fixture under Frank Lampard, and he's a very solid shout for this severely limited What If England 11. Left wing, Mark Albrighton. There's no Jadon Sancho, Raheem Sterling, Marcus Rashford or Callum Hudson-Odoi available to me in this 11. I can't even call upon the likes of Nathan Redmond or Harvey Barnes, who could have represented Ireland and Scotland respectively, and that leads me to Barnes' club teammate and fellow uncapped wide man, Mark Albrighton. Perhaps the most overlooked member of Leicester City's heroic title-winning side of 2016, Albrighton, was signed by Leicester on a free transfer in 2014. And what a fine servant and signing for the club he has turned out to be. Now aged 30, Albrighton previously represented England at youth level, but it would take either an injury crisis of epic proportions or Nick Griffin being appointed England boss for him to win his senior cap now. Centre forward, Jamie Vardy. Staying in Leicester, at centre forward, we have a very capable goal-getter who, like James Milner, has also retired from international football in real life. That was most likely down to the fact that the presence of Harry Kane left Vardy feeling as though he would never be Gareth Southgate's first choice, but with Kane eligible to represent the Republic of Ireland, and even Marcus Rashford eligible to represent the St Kitts and Nevis national team through one of his grandparents, Vardy would most probably be first choice in this fictional world that we have invented. Born in Sheffield and raised on a diet of only Red Bull and WKDs, Vardy was released by the Sheffield Wednesday Academy at the age of 16. He defied the odds to rise to the top though through the non-league ranks, becoming a prolific Premier League goalscorer and even winning himself the division's Golden Boot last season. So that is my starting 11, but I've also tried to come up with a 7-man bench just to make life even harder for myself. Serving as backups and impact options, I would have Nick Pope, Kieran Trippier, Lewis Dunk, James Ward-Prowse, Adam Lallana, Emil Smith-Rowe, and Danny Ings. Now, I should say, I made my 11 first, which I was chuffed with, and then it took me another hour or so to find 7 capable deputies. So they were created separately, but looking at them all together, I think you could make 1 or 2 cases for starting Lewis Dunk in favour of John Stones, and maybe even James Ward-Prowse ahead of James Milner. I'm a huge fan of both Adam Lallana and Danny Ings, but it's a little harder to find a place for them, but they're very capable deputies, and they end up making this 11 slightly stronger than I had originally anticipated. Still, when you compare it to this, which is my England 11 that could have represented other national teams, but chose to represent England, what with them being English and all, I think it's easy to see who comes out on top, especially in the attacking areas where they are so strong that the likes of Marcus Rashford and Mason Greenwood are forced to miss out. So that is it for today's video, but thank you all as ever for watching. Give us a like if you enjoyed this video, let me know your thoughts down below in the comments, feel free to check out the other video about the France national team, and make sure that you are subscribed to HITC Sevens. Oh, and you can also follow me on Twitter or Instagram, where the username is just @HITC Sevens on both.